here. We'll get started. Why don't we go around the room, make introductions, and then we'll go from there. We'll start with Chuck.
I'm Chuck Cullum, Colorado River Programs Manager for the Central Arizona Project.
Wade Noble from Yuma.
Orestes Morphine, Central Arizona Project.
Good afternoon. My name is Carrie Scott. I'm the Chief of the Technical Support Office for Yuma Area Office of Reclamation.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Michael Norris, the Deputy Area Manager for the Yuma Area Office and with Reclamation.
My name is Reed Blockberger. I'm a hydrologist with the Salt River Project.
I'm Martin Stiles with Department of Water Resources.
Jerry Walker, also with ADWR.
Bob Lutz with APS.
Brian Payne, Arizona Municipal Water Users Association.
Zach Richards, AWR.
Dick Carr, Sonoran Water Group.
Terry Smolenstein, Sigma.
Karen Vanessa, ADWR.
Kyle Lyman, I'm a farmer in Buckeye, member of the Buckeye Water Conservation Drainage District.
I'm Robbie Gilali, I'm with ADWR.
Ty Sipley with Audubon, Arizona.
Brittany McKinstry with the Arizona Chamber.
Ron Whitler, City of Buckeye.
Frank Milam, City of Phoenix.
Natalie Mast, ADWR.
Very good. To have everybody here on a Monday afternoon. We drove all the way up from Yuma just to be here. So we got a couple of things today, mostly focused around Yuma. Chuck and Orestes from our last meeting had made a presentation on some information in Yuma, and we as a group asked them to do some more work and provide some more information back to the group, and they have done that. And would like to give them an opportunity to show the results of that work.
Well, thank you, Bob.
Anything you want to kind of prelude before you start the slideshow, Chuck?
Sure. This information was developed by CAP through funding from CAP to support the consideration of the brackish groundwater opportunities from the Yuma area. That area has that brackish resource has been the subject of on-again, off-again evaluations and discussions since at least 2005 with the there was a group that evaluated the concept back then. It was considered in 2007, 2009 time frame for the Basin States Augmentation Study. It was then considered as one of the identified options on the bypass flows work group. Jerry, remind me when that was. Is that 2014, 2015 time frame? And then there were some data gaps that we have worked to fill and to share with this group as the appropriate venue for concept development and discussion of ways to augment Arizona's Colorado River supply, potentially with treating brackish groundwater in the Yuma area. So I'm going to provide some background and then get to the sensitivity analysis that this group asked for.
I'm going to give you this just in case that isn't working.
Let's see. Or that I don't know how to work it.
You might want to use the arrow keys.
Yeah. Thanks. Appreciate it. We'll try something else. How about now? Next. All right. So these investigations were all focused on providing information to this august body, the Governor's Water Augmentation Council Desal Committee. The focus has been to figure out how to reduce system losses in Lake Mead, reduce the risk of shortage to Arizona from the Colorado River system, and to support augmentation of new water supplies Noting always that these concepts can only be developed with and through the cooperation of local interests and the Bureau of Reclamation. I'm thrilled to see Reclamation at the table and sitting and being part of these discussions today. So the central question of the investigation is what are the range of opportunities to develop brackish groundwater from the Yuma area, also known as the Mound. And there were two investigation components, a groundwater model, which we're going to talk about today, where we updated that model run with some sensitivity analysis, and then an extraction well field and conveyance to treat that brackish groundwater and deliver it to water users locally or to the Colorado River for exchange. In summary, there appears to be a sustainable yield of in the round number figure of about 50,000 acre-feet per year, and the CH2M estimates that the extraction, conveyance, treatment, and delivery of that groundwater for local use or exchange is on the neighborhood of $550 an acre-foot. Just to familiarize ourselves, this is a groundwater elevation contour map and the major water-using entity boundaries in the area. This is the Yuma Valley, Yuma County Water Users Association. This is the Gila Valley. This is the mound itself, centered largely under Yuma Mesa Irrigation and Drainage District. There's a significant control for water levels and hydrologic flow, which is the Algodones fault zone. Zooming in a little bit, so currently the elevation of groundwater beneath Yuma Mesa is 213 feet above mean sea level, about 40 feet below ground surface. And for point of reference, Morelos Dam is 112 feet above mean sea level, with groundwater 10 or 12 feet below ground surface at that area. So basically what the hydrologic conditions, groundwater elevations are higher on the mound. Flow to the south is somewhat constrained by the fault. Groundwater elevations are shallow in Yuma Valley and the Gila Valley, generating drainage problems and risk to agriculture. So, how would you develop, one concept to develop the groundwater beneath the mound, and this was the exploration by Black and Veatch in 2016 and 2017. Through a mod flow model that was based on the work of the USGS in 2006, which was based on the work by Brad Hill in 1992 when he was with the Arizona Department of Water Resources. It all stems from the department. When we evaluate the estimated volume under the mound in currently is about 600,000 acre-feet in single simulation, 30 or 40 extraction wells, estimating 1,000 to 1,100 GPM per well. The model shows that 50,000 acre-feet a year can be developed on a sustainable basis. That's where the transient case closes, around 50,000 acre-feet. We then asked folks at Reclamation what a reasonable assumption for extraction rate based on their drainage wells is, and they reported back that a minimum yield is about 2,000 gallons per minute. When we applied that to the work that CH2M did, which was how would you develop the resource, how would you convey it, how would you treat it, they came back and said, well, giving that sort of pumping, you only need 19 wells to generate 50,000 acre-feet per year. So here's the results of the transient case with the Black and Veatch model of about 30 extraction wells in the vicinity of the mound. You can see that the impact to groundwater elevations basically stabilizing under the mound. So how do you develop the water supply? You develop new well fields. CH looked at 2 options: bracketing the mound, the apex of the mound, 3 different conveyances, and then assuming that the existing treatment plant, the Yuma desalting plant, might be available through some type of agreement with reclamation, evaluating what the mods or amendments or changes to the YDP to treat that water might be. Again, we would optimize existing facilities to minimize the overall costs. So, option 1 is basically south of the airport, and option 2 is well spacing around the apex of the mound. Again, those are 19 wells that would be developed to extract that brackish resource. 3 conveyance options. 1 is in purple. This would be utilizing Reclamation's Yuma Mesa conduit. Second is the open field conveyance, which is just optimizing existing road rights-of-way, and then through lettuce fields if we're willing to buy lettuce fields for a right-of-way. I wouldn't recommend that, but that's the way that is laid out.
It's an expensive property.
That's exactly right. And then third is utilizing the Yuma East Main Canal, which also is an existing reclamation right-of-way. When the engineers looked at the conduit in detail, we note that there isn't a lot of workspace there. There are backyards and swimming pools. It goes through for southeastern Arizona, a highly urbanized setting, whereas the Yuma East Main has a very broad right-of-way if one could structure an arrangement with reclamation. Treatment considerations: utilize the existing facilities when and if possible. Maintaining YDP's source flexibility, meaning leaving space for reclamation to step in and treat the mode pursuant to Title I of the Salinity Control Act. So what we would do is basically piggyback on as much of the existing infrastructure as possible, and then delivering the treated water blended with some of the brackish groundwater to local users or to the river for exchange. I don't think we need to grind through all the treatment. I would just mispronounce a bunch of stuff. So here's what we were asked to do, is to conduct sensitivity analysis on what the effect future changes in the Yuma Mesa area for irrigation and drainage could have on the groundwater mound. When we think about the mass balance that generates the mound of groundwater under the Yuma Mesa, it's important to know that a significant portion of that annual supply is generated from what the model refers to as irrigation recharge. Basically, it's the water that's applied to the land, isn't consumed by crops, and leaks into the groundwater system or drainage system. The model assumes that volume in the region is 130,500 acre-feet per year. Again, that's based on the mass balance that was generated in the 2006 model that the USGS prepared at the behest of reclamation. The pumping rate is 53,000 odd acre-feet. The conductivity data is from the available model, and we have the model boundaries, which are the Gila Mountains to the east, the Southerly International boundary to the south, the Limotroph or the Colorado River to the west, and the Gila River to the north. So 3 simulations. The existing model, which has 130,500 acre-feet per year of leakage into or flux out of the irrigation systems. The second simulation assumed a 20% reduction focused on the Yuma Mesa irrigation and drainage area. I want to be abundantly clear to everybody who's listening that this is a modeling assumption. This is not a plan or a proposal. It's to test the sensitivity of changes in irrigation behavior on the sustainability of the mound, because that's one of the primary drivers for that 50,000 acre-foot number is assumptions about how much irrigated agriculture is in play. And so the question that we had in November was, well, how does that sustainability change, or what are the impacts if agricultural practices in the region change? So we did 20,000 acre, 20% reduction, stepped over 10 years. So at the end of 10 years, a full 20% reduction is applied, assuming that change doesn't happen overnight. Simulation 3 is a 10% reduction with broad application, meaning that the reduction occurs on a broader area, Gila Valley, Yuma Mesa, Yuma County. So we reduced that 130,500 acre feet by 1% a year until you get 10% by the end of 10 years. So we tried to bracket baseline, what would be a very large, a sizable reduction in irrigation practices, and then sort of a medium reduction in irrigation practices. So what did we learn from that? Under simulation 1, with respect to the elevation under the mound, the apex elevation is reduced by 31 feet, so that's baseline. The extraction over to hit transient case is about 446,350 acre feet. That isn't the volume out of the mound, that's how much of that flux moving through the mound is captured. So for hydrologists, that matters. The reduction, there's another outcome is that in the baseline condition, there's a reduction in groundwater elevation beneath the agricultural areas of the Yuma and Gila valleys, ranging from 1 to 15 feet, that could be viewed as a benefit to the Yuma area by reducing the risk of whatever it is when you put too much water in the crops drown. Where your drainage
high groundwater.
High groundwater. Thanks. That's a technical term. I was looking for something a little more than that, but that's exactly right. So we reduced high groundwater elevations beneath the high-value irrigation lands in the Yuma and Gila Valley. So simulation 2, remember this is the 20% conceptual change in agricultural practices. So there we dropped the apex of the mound by 46 feet, ending at 167 feet above mean sea level. So that's an additional 15 feet of reduction beneath the mound. With respect to the flux change, that is how much you're capturing of the movement through, instead of 446,000 acre feet, you're actually pumping 667,000 acre feet of what could be characterized as storage. And then the reduction in that high groundwater beneath the Yuma and Gila valleys expands, so you're taking more of that drainage problem from the north and west. And in simulation 3, not surprisingly, it's somewhere in between the baseline and the higher reduction. apex drops 38.5 feet, so ends up about 175 above mean sea level. The volume of storage that you take out is about 536,000, more than the baseline, less than the 20% simulation. And then the impact to the high groundwater areas is, would you believe, somewhere between the baseline and the 20% simulation. Shocking. Just to remind ourselves of the costs, the all-in construction costs estimated from CH is somewhere between $155 and $160 million. The annual operating costs are about $16 million. When you net present value and run it against the yield, you get somewhere in the neighborhood of $550 an acre foot. So, brackish groundwater under Yuma Mesa appears to be to have the opportunity to be a sustainable development resource to the tune of about 50,000 acre-feet based on the work of CH and Black and Veatch. Their estimates show that a local supply or water for an exchange could come in to the tune of about $550 an acre-foot. Potential next steps, this is my suggestion, just as additional value added to this conversation. One option would be focused on outreach, which is sharing the results of these investigations and concepts with a broader audience than just this committee. Conduct discussions with reclamation and local water users to get their ideas on what project concepts, benefits, risks, and funding options might be. From a technical standpoint, in order to refine the information, refine the analysis, there are a couple of data gaps that could be filled. One is aquifer testing, both from a water quality and from a conductivity, transmissivity standpoint. The model is based on the 2006 data, which is based on the 92 data, which is based on aquifer tests that were done in the 70s and 80s, getting some point data in the vicinity of the mound, both from water quality and water chemistry, and from aquifer performance, would allow the treatment scheme and the number of wells and potential performance of those wells to be amended and get a better cost estimate. And then obviously testing, doing some pre-treatment testing on the RO, whether you can get away with cartridge filtration or some oxidation microfiltration approaches, are something that the geochemistry treatment chemical engineer guys are really jazzed about. Can't wait, right? Gonna really grind into that. With that, any questions?
Questions? So Chuck, this is based on a transient groundwater model, is that correct? What would the results have been if it was a transient versus a steady state case? Can you throw some light onto that? And then you chose 3 simulations, from 3 simulations were presented, and was there a motivation in choosing those 2?
Sure. Well, let me take the last one first, and that'll get Orestes time to answer your first question. The 2 reductions in irrigation activities in the region. One, the higher percentage reduction was based on the conventional wisdom that 20% reduction in agricultural practices is the limit before you get unacceptable third-party impacts, and I don't want to get hung up on what is acceptable or unacceptable. It's just that in California fallowing programs, that has been the informal bargain that has been reached between the funders of fallowing and the communities. There's also a mitigation payment on top of that to mitigate what are indeed third-party impacts, but the actual water yield is generally limited to 20%. So that's why the upper bound was picked, and 10% is half of that. And we just believe the results are somewhere in the middle. Orestes, are you?
Yeah, no, we have steady state results in this report as well. We just didn't present
Which you have, right? You have the report?
Yeah.
I have the report and gone through the report and not the model though. Yeah.
Well, we're happy to go through the report with you.
Yeah, we have them. It's section 3, and it says that we had the steady state was used to replicate the general groundwater elevations with particular focus on the vicinity of the apex,
right,
discontinuity on either side of the fault, and groundwater elevations extending down towards the SIB. So that information's in here. I can easily go over it with you.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you.
Cool.
Right.
So when I'm looking at these apex numbers with the apex falling, was the drainage assumptions, were they the same for each scenario, or did it assume that it was a change as a result of
No, we assumed that the other levers or variables, that is the drainage pumping, would remain the same.
through all 3 scenarios?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's helpful.
It is.
Is there an existing drainage system there now?
I'll let Reclamation answer that. It's your drainage system.
You talking about the
Mesa.
basic conduit? Yes.
What do you figure you're pumping out there now?
How many
I would
CFS?
say up on the mesa, near the mound, there's 8 wells. I think a couple of them are not currently operating. I think that they range in production between probably 1,500 to 3,000 CPS.
And what's the TDS of that which you're pumping out right now?
That's one of my questions I wrote down. The water quality.
So they're pumping out about 1,400 to 1,600 part water.
Really?
Yeah.
Pretty good water. All right.
Right, that's what.
They use that for irrigation.
Well, that's sort of what makes the target somewhat attractive, is the brackish water isn't that salty.
You could clean a third of it and mix it with the rest and have acceptable water.
Yep, that's right.
Well, in 2019, there's going to be an alternative use for the conduit. We're currently working on a project from the 2015 bypass work group to take lower saline water from the 242 well site and deliver it north. So in 2019, there's going to be an alternative use, which means the water is going to be significantly less class.
So where is this water coming from that you're going to pump out? Where do you think the source is?
It's largely from irrigation seepage.
You don't think there's any subflow?
The mass balance that the model has, it's a really small relative component from the Gila in Colorado. The Colorado's really further to the west, and the Gila rarely flows in significant volumes.
Also the development of the mound over time.
Yeah, so, and Orestes is reminding me that the groundwater elevations over time show that it's coincident, the growth of the mound is coincident with the application of irrigation.
And right now the irrigation water is all Colorado River water.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
How many acre feet of water they're putting there a year? South Colorado?
Lisa?
Yeah. No, what are the areas that you can be grading?
Well, there's about 800,000 to 1 million acre feet applied in that region, but that includes Welton Mohawk, that includes a number of other irrigation districts, but broadly, 800,000 acre feet in the vicinity of the mound is applied.
One thing to note is that those Yuma Mesa wells are relatively shallow, so if you see a 30-foot decline in the depth of the mound, I'd be interested to see what that would do to the water quality over time, right? Because you were screening from like 150 feet right now, right? So you have some potential well field ramifications.
Yeah, and that's, again, why if we were to ask additional technical questions, we would want to have a greater water chemistry and hydraulic properties profile vertically. Because right now we don't have a lot of that information because the drainage wells are pretty shallow.
So your drainage wells, you say 10 or 8 or 10 feet, what's the static water level?
I'm not sure. I know that it declines going
10 feet.
southbound.
It's about 10 feet below land surface for the toe of the mesa. So that's the west side of the mesa where the drainage is coming off the mesa, flowing in and under the the Yuma Valley.
But where you're looking at putting wells up on the mesa, I think the depth averages about 40 feet.
Right, yeah, under the mound, yeah.
Under the ground surface to get to them.
Right, yeah, that's what we're saying the same thing. So if we go back, sorry, because I just, we're almost there. Wade. This is the part Wade liked. Because it's kind of a cool map. So what Reclamation is saying right here, it's about 40 feet below land surface. That's the top of the mound, right? That's the 213 feet below, above mean sea level. When you look at these contours over here, this is where the significant drainage pumping is right here. You can see that from the groundwater contours that water is, we can imagine it sort of cascades off the mound and then flows into this important agricultural region where depth to groundwater is between 10 and 12 feet. And when in certain areas you get depths as shallow as 4 feet, which can be harmful to crops. And that's why Reclamation operates these drainage wells to intercept as much of that water flowing from the mesa into the Yuma Valley. They also operate drainage wells to the north here in the Gila Valley, again, capturing drainage, putting it back in the river, protecting agricultural users. Does that get it? Is that it?
Any other questions? Chuck and Aristus, thanks for following up on that.
You bet.
Good information. Really appreciate it. So, look at all that water and you'd say, this is a slam dunk, right? We'll just go down there and start doing something. But one of the things that we put on our matrix of issues that have to be resolved is public perception, public acceptance, and on the 12th of March, I had an opportunity to set up a meeting for some folks down in Yuma, Mark Smith and Tom Davis and Elston and Wade, and we discussed what are the possibilities of, at least through their lens, of making something happen in the Yuma area. And So we talked about a lot of things. So their perception of this area is that they're currently, when they pump the water, they get credit for the water returned from their pump. And if we took that water or a portion of that water away, then credits would be lost. I'm saying it through my lens and my filter, Wade, so if I got this screwed up, you jump in, because it's been a while since we've been there, and I looked through my notes and I can't hardly read my writing, so. And at the end of the discussion, what I got from, especially Mark, he seemed very knowledgeable, was there is a water balance that occurs down there, and there is pumping, that credits are received, there is the Cienega that receives a certain amount of flow, there's irrigation that goes on, and at the end of the day, there really is no excess water. Everything is balanced, and if we as a committee took any additional water out of that area, that balance would be lost. So if there is, I mean, your point, Chuck, is spot on. A next step would be to go over the results with the folks down in Yuma and have a discussion, have continued discussion. I think is really the key to everything, and I don't know if it goes anywhere, and I'm okay if it doesn't. I mean that's fine with me. I mean I left feeling we are not going to push the Yuma area residents into something that they don't want to have happen. These are pretty upstanding citizens, and they have their opinion of how things work, and the only way to get them off that position would be to work with them to develop whatever we needed to do to prove otherwise. And the four of us have kind of had that discussion, and so we have talked about this a little bit, and there's some, if any of you read the notes from the meeting that took place down in Yuma, you will know, or you do know, there's some very strong opinions of what the Yuma residents feel, and us people up here in the middle of the state don't need to come down there and take their water, right? And so, difficult road to hoe if we're going to do anything, and we will have to take it a step at a time to make headway. This will take a lot of time to turn around some of the sentiment that exists down there. That's okay. We don't need it today. Just tomorrow will be fine. So we'll have to just kind of develop a strategy with Wade and see how we go. But I do appreciate you setting up the meeting for me. Nice drive down to Yuma. My GPS got me totally screwed up, and I was out by her power plant. It's like,
just drew you home.
yeah, I was like, why do I always end up going there? Yeah, and a great lunch.
Where'd you have lunch?
Wade's office.
I brought in, I think we had chili pepper.
I was gonna say, did you have chili pepper? I brought back like 6 burritos when I came back from San Diego.
Wade, do you have anything to add to this?
Well, I believe that the consensus is that it needs to go step by step, and it appears the appropriate next step would be to have some meeting in Yuma
about the perfect time of the year for a meeting in Yuma. It's getting just about right down there.
Around Christmas, you might look a bit.
There would be resistance to a meeting. I will make some inquiries to see what degree of interest there is in having a meeting. Who do we propose would participate in the meeting besides reclamation?
I don't know folks down there well enough. I mean, I would appreciate...
No, I'll take care of that in.
Okay.
Who do you propose coming down?
Oh, well, our group, I would, here's one way to do it, Wade, is if we can get a conference room over at YDP again, or in an APS office, we can have one of our meetings down there and invite the Bureau folks and other folks from the area to attend our meeting and have a discussion that way.
Let's talk to Maria and see how she might feel about hosting such a meeting, up to and including perhaps making the invitations to the meeting.
Okay.
And it sounds like whenever that, if ever that gets worked out, that'll be our next meeting. Is there something else on the stove?
No. No. This is the biggest thing in the oven right now. I mean, we continue to look at the West Valley, the groundwater that is pumped out of that area, and that truly is brackish groundwater that Kyle and his folks pump out every year.
We are big.
I know, it's like...
It's wet, right?
Some of those wells you guys have are, what, 5,000 to 8,000 ppm TDS?
Yeah, we have probably worth about 4,000 bucks on our canal, our production well. I don't think we have very many, I think 14 above that.
Yeah. Yeah, water around there is...
But we can keep the guys, grow alfalfa and everything.
Yeah, so, Kyle and BWCDD have been pumping about 30,000 acre feet a year for, what, 100 years or so?
Yeah, probably about 50.
50. And, so, a little different animal though in the AMA, still have to wrestle with the groundwater and how we put use and how you get credit for it, and DWR accept it, and not accepted, but just really the accounting methodology of that, and the other big question that we always have is disposal of the brine stream. We have some of the cities, Goodyear, struggling with that today, and that won't go away. DEQ, I've met with them. They're very interested in deep well injection. We are seeking to take primacy from EPA.
It passed.
Successfully.
And was signed.
Yeah.
So it will be about 2 years before they get through all the hurdles, is what Trevor, maybe a year, but somewhere in that 1 to 2 year range for them to complete the process. So that's really great news, and part of what DEQ is going to do is you won't be double permitted, right? So if you have the deep well injection permit, you don't need an APP, which is that's a big step. So, but it's an expensive test hole. If you're wrong, you just throw a lot of money right down in the ground, so.
Literally.
Yes, literally. So you better know going in that you got a pretty good chance of the geology being right to be able to do an injection. With that,
I have a question about that.
okay.
As I recall, Director Bushotsky at the last full GWAC meeting said he was going to meet with some folks in Mexico about some new technologies regarding brackish, tariff brackish. Does that ring any bells?
What a remarkable memory he has.
Yes.
The last GWAC meeting.
Yeah.
January.
When was that?
January.
So, in the Binational Desal work group process, which Director Brushatsky is a co-chair with Sergio Avila from Sonora. The state of Sonora, when they were working on their Primus desal project, seawater desal project, they were approached by some folks who claimed to have a zero liquid discharge technology, or a technology that really reduces the amount of discharge.
It wasn't the folks that came in here, was it?
No, but it's an offshoot of that same, basically, aqueous geochemistry fracking, where you take the brine stream and break it into consumables or commercial products through pressure temperature control. So they were, that entrepreneurial group wanted to meet with Sonora, and Sergio, in his role as co-chair, said, Tom, I hear you're thinking about desal in Arizona, why don't we meet together? And that was discussed at the March meeting of that group, and there has been no follow-up that I'm aware of. It's not on the agenda for the May meeting. It's probably something that might happen in the fall.
So it's just a high-level presentation.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
So I would tell you, none of this new technology, it's old technology
That's
configured a certain way to get to zero liquid discharge. And that last few thousand gallons is very expensive. But the first may not be as expensive. And so there's as many different groups that I'm on. I haven't seen breakthrough technology yet that significantly reduces the cost or the energy demand to take 5 to 30,000 ppm TDS water, make it potable water. Not for lack of trying.
I'm shocked that the rules of chemistry and physics apply.
Still haven't changed. Yes. But people continue to do research. Sandia National Lab is doing some research on some infected membrane technology, but it is still on the bench.
Yeah, and just the risk, one of the risks in that, what I call sort of salt fracking technology, is that if you get it wrong in any of your processes, it will precipitate into your system, and it's a redo, right? Meaning that the salts will precipitate in a particular module, and everything is now...
Because it's in series.
Right, because it's in series. So your pipelines all of a sudden become salt tubes.
What was the name of the...
Not tubes.
Yeah, right.
No longer, they're just a salt vessel.
That's exactly right.
What was the name of the group that went down to Sonora?
I don't know.
You don't remember?
They were Spanish, I believe, but it's
the same
very
thing,
similar to what the guys in El Paso were doing.
Yeah.
I mean, because it has to.
Yeah.
Same technologies.
Yeah, it's controlling temperature and pressure so that you precipitate out commodity grade salts. Yeah. Good night. I would just add, I appreciate sharing the results of your discussion in Yuma, and just to reiterate the point that I believe very strongly that the Desal Committee is the right space for these types of conversations, and inviting more people to participate, rather than the perception that one group or another is going to push a project along without the full support and concurrence of and benefits to the local water using community is not something that CAP would support.
Thank you. And thanks for sharing that information. It's much appreciated for you guys to put into information for us. Any target time for the meeting? So, June?
Get with Maria tomorrow, I'll give her a call.
Okay.
I think she's at another meeting right now. I'll try to perhaps call her on the way home.
I was thinking you'd wait till the
July, August.
the humidity temperature index was.
No, that's the collusion, asking her to wait until.
Oh, yeah.
Right, my apologies.
You got a copy of this thing?
Would you like one?
Yes.
You can get it from him.
Is it gonna be posted?
Meeting, webinar, public meeting, webinar.
Oh, yeah. It would
So-
be a public meeting.
So you're proposing it to be the
Take
next
as many as you'd like.
the next committee?
I wanted to clarify, is it okay if we put the PowerPoint on our website with this meeting?
Yeah, it's a PDF, yeah.
Okay, great.
Change the information. Perfect. All right, thanks everybody for coming.
I've seen some Twitter accounts